The history of the remake arguably starts in 1931, in which Dracula was made by Universal Pictures, which came out 9 years after Nosferatu, both of them based off the Bram Stoker novel. Okay, and that's my dissertation on the history of remakes.
Bravo.
I know. So I think I guess one thing I want to say first, it's a long I guess running joke might be the right word. I have been somewhat critical of remakes, sometimes infamously so. Like some of the most popular remakes that people legitimately like, I prefer the original to. It's almost to the point of where it's a parody, but I'm being serious. Like, three of the most popular remakes in the horror fandom, generally, this is just generally seems to be the 1988 The Blob movie, the 1982 The Thing, which is a remake from The Thing from Another World. Then you also have the 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then you also have The Fly from '86, with Jeff Goldblum, which is a remake of the 1958 The Fly. And pretty much all of those movies, I enjoy the originals two more. And at least for me, it counts because I happen to see those older versions first. So it's not necessarily taken away from the remake. Like The Thing is often called one of the best horror movies, and I just, it's okay. But one of the best horror movies, I just don't see it. So I guess, what were your views on first off those four movies right there?
Just go through the list again. It was The Blob, The Thing.
The Fly from '86, and then Invasion of the Body Snatchers from '78.
Mm. Well, you know me, and I don't watch a lot of movies from before the 70s. It's just I tend to not really enjoy movies from before those times. So I have seen the original Blob, mainly because it's a movie that my dad used to watch when he was younger, and so I've seen that a couple of times maybe, but it's been a long time to the point where I can't even really remember much of it. So I probably tend to go with enjoying those remakes over the originals, just for the simple fact that I don't really get along with movies from before the 70s.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about these movies in particular, one, the remaking movies are like 30 years old, which helps. Like The
Yeah.
Thing from Another World from '51. I mean, that's a pretty good movie for that time. But then they make a new Thing movie, and then it's like they have like really big names in it too. It's a ultra popular movie. But then you sort of mentioned sometimes a remake can also be somewhat pointless. Um, and I'm not sure what the best example of a pointless remake would be, but I would bet like $1,000 it would probably be the 1998 Psycho movie.
Well, I don't know necessarily if pointless is the right word, but I think the big thing here is that a lot of these older movies, like there's such a drastic difference in how movies. Sorry, there's been a I mean, there's been so much more advancements in movie making, I guess, from cameras to effects and all that kind of stuff. So, when there's all those advancements that have been made, or that's now available to you to make a movie, I mean, you can never make a movie like the with 80s effects back in the 50s. It just wasn't possible. So that helps a lot. Whereas the jump from 80s to the 2000s or whatever, the jump in effects is not that great. In fact, you got digital effects now, and those they weren't always great. So I think that's a big thing about it, is that you can do a lot more with effects in the 80s than you could have, back in the 50s and 60s. And I mean, you got color. You got color.
Yeah, but how much does color really bring to a movie?
Quite a lot.
Indeed, that's the exact type of answer I was expecting from you.
Yeah.
So, and well, I guess the one positive thing, I mean, it's hard for me to come up with a remake I actually liked more than the original. There are movies out there, but there's just not that many. There are some remakes I think that might be comparable to the originals. Like, for instance, the Woman in Black, which it may be a movie you may not have even seen, but there's a 2012 movie. It's remade from a 1989 British movie, and I thought both of them had some pretty good qualities to them. You have the Hills of Eyes from I think it's 2006, and I enjoy the original one, but the 2006 movie's not bad. It's actually somewhat enjoyable.
Yeah.
To me it feels a little bit like wrong tone, only Hills of Eyes, but it's still pretty enjoyable. I mean, there's some pretty decent remakes out there, like The Dawn of the Dead. We covered that movie. I don't know, somewhere between 3 and 18 episodes ago, somewhere like that. That's a pretty good movie. Admittedly, it's hard to screw up like a high budget zombie movie, but it can be done.
Yeah, yeah. There's I mean, my relationship with remakes is not that bad. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are like, "Oh, will you just stop remaking everything?" And to me, it's not a matter of how much they remake; it's just how they go about remaking the actual movie. Like there's movies, like a couple, for instance, that just felt like word for word remakes for the most part. Like I think there was the Omen and Carrie. I mean, Carrie, the original Carrie is a movie I really enjoy. You not so much, but so there was potential for you to probably enjoy a remake just because you didn't necessarily love the original. But like the Omen, Carrie, and there's others out there, but they tend to borrow a lot of dialogue from the original movie, like almost word for word dialogue. And I mean, when you compare a movie from the 70s to 2000s, obviously the way people talk is going to be a little different, but they're still using the exact same dialogue. They don't really try to do too much with the script to make it fresh, I guess is my point there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to result in a good movie, but I think it's more, what's the point in watching the same thing again?
Yeah, and actually, on a somewhat similar note, there's always a potential that, like in the original movie, maybe doesn't. It's not as quite as good as it could be, and they might have a chance to even like improve on it if they do it the right way. Well, sometimes they're not able to do that. I think that a lot of people, when if they, the movie makers, I think they know the remakes they're making probably are going to be as good as the originals. This is a movie from 1963, named Dementia 13, which was randomly remade in 2017. It's like one of those movies that the remake it just popped out of nowhere. Like I happened to see it on sci-fi. I'm like, what the fuck? There's a 2017 Dementia 13. Like the original isn't like a cult classic or anything. If it is, it's only because of like William Ford Coppola directed it. It's one of his earlier movies. So I watched the 2017 movie, and I was thinking, it's never a big fan of the original one, so maybe this one would be okay, and they completely ruined it. Like they had the chance, they had like nicer technology. It's actually color because the original was in black and white. They had okay actors. I mean, nobody big, but they had a chance to like improve upon the story, and they just they just throw it all on the water, which is somewhat disappointing. Because even if a remake can't be anywhere near as good, you can hope it can at least be okay. And I think that's the problem with some of these remakes. That like it seems like that might be some of what they shoot for. Especially if you look at movies. I'm not sure if you've seen like the Last House on the Left remake.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'll be like, I've never been a big fan of the original movie. I think it's okay. I just don't think it's great. But the remake, it felt so Hollywood. Like at least the original has a nice gritty 70s feel. It's a bit goofy at times, but the remake, it just really rubbed me the wrong way. It's such a Hollywood feel. Like I don't know, it just didn't have anywhere near the charm, if you can call it charm, that the original had in my view.
Yeah. I don't really have any lists or anything, but and I don't know if you even know, but what do you have like a favorite remake of all time? Like, is there a movie that really stands out to you?
There's one movie that I actually saw before I saw the original, and that was the aforementioned Dawn of the Dead. When I first saw Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 movie, it sort of blew me away. I didn't know a zombie movie could actually be that fun. So then I went back to watch the original movie, and I know the original movie has a bunch of different cuts. I always go with the longest one if possible. And when I saw the original, that was also like an easy 10 out of 10. So when I last sat down with that, I gave it a slightly lower rating. There is one remake that it's not better than the original, but it's a remake I definitely wanted to mention because I think it's really creative. Um, so I don't know if you're familiar with Indian cinema, but this Indian ripoff horror movies out there. This one from the mid '90s. I think in the U.S. it's called The Monster. In Indian, or which I think it's probably, I forget which Indian language it is, but it's Mahakal.
The Nightmare on Elm Street one.
Which and so yeah, I'm not saying that remake. It's a ripoff because they use the same music. I mean, I'm amazed there's people that get sued. But I guess wow, how much can you do against people in India? But I'll say I thought it was because it's a lower budget movie. Indian movies even in the '90s weren't like high production. At least these weren't high productions. Um, it has a sort of creepy vibe to it. Also, if you haven't seen an Indian movie and you're interested, hey, a Nightmare on Elm Street Indian movie, there is dancing and singing. So don't forget that. But I think it has a decent amount of charm to it. And I don't know if I'd call it like my quote unquote favorite remake, but I do think it might be one of the most unique, might be the right word. Because even though it takes kills from like I think movies 1 through 4, it even has a few original scenes in it too, which are sort of creepy. So if you can find a subtitled version of the movie, and you're a big fan of the original, I would recommend at least giving it a look, at least trying it for the random remake recommendation of the night.
Mm.
Do you have like a favorite remake that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, I'll probably have to go with It Chapter 1. Chapter 1, not Chapter 2. For two reasons. Well, I mean, one is I gave it a 10 out of 10, so therefore it's, one of my favorite movies, I guess. So the other side to that is that the original is actually my second favorite horror movie. I mean, I know it's technically a mini series, but I'll just call it a movie for movie's sake. In fact, my two all-time favorite horror movies, Child's Play and It, they've both been remade. It Chapter 1 is 10 out of 10 for me. The Child's Play remake, I thought, it was actually pretty good. I originally gave that a 9 out of 10, but
Oh God,
since rewatching it, I've decided to probably drop it
to a 6.
down to an 8, but
Okay.
no, I still think it's a good movie. It just has a few moments in there that I thought could have been better. But I still think it's a pretty good movie. Still nowhere near as good as the original, but there you go. But yeah, It Chapter 1, that is, that's the one that I would probably put as the best remake for me.
There's another remake out there. Now this one is going to be like an unpopular choice, and by unpopular I mean a lot of people may not have even seen this remake. But Night of the Demons is a pretty good movie from the late '80s. I think it's 1988. It has a strong cast and a pretty fun story. They did a remake. I think it was in 2008 or 2009. It might have been straight to DVD. I'll be surprised if it wasn't. But I thought they had a surprisingly decent amount of humor. Pretty fun story, some quality nudity. So that's a remake that a lot of people may not even know about. And even if you love the original, and I enjoy the original, it's certainly a remake that might be worth looking out for.
So just in general, I think for me, just I don't have a problem if they want to just go ahead and remake almost everything. I just I think there is a point where you have to give some time between the original and it's not even like a definitive amount of years or anything. It's just when does the original feel like like it's really showing its age. Like there's certain movies that are made in the 80s that still hold up today, but then there's some, made in the 90s that don't hold up today.
And what's somewhat funny about that is, depending on the situation, it may not even matter how many years. I'm thinking about, I don't know if, now luckily we've moved away from this, and I really hope we stay away from this. But remember the American boom in like the 2000s where they were remaking like every Asian horror movie?
Yeah.
Like they remade The Ring, they remade Dark Water. Now, some of those remakes were pretty okay. I actually really like the Dark Water remake. And that came out like 3 years later after the original Japanese movie. The Garage. They made like a bunch of them. So, and some of those were okay, but like trying to bring it to like another culture too. I'm sure there's a lot of Americans. I'm sure I would hope. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being optimistic. I would hope a lot of people who saw like The Ring or The Garage knew it was based off a Japanese movie, because I think those have sort of permeated culture. So I hope people know that. So in a way, if somebody watches like, oh God, if somebody has the misfortune of watching the Jessica Alba The Eye remake and they go back to see the original, like at least they can, it might pull them into seeing maybe a different type of, maybe if they don't usually watch Asian horror, maybe they want to see how the story goes if it's done better, so they check out the original. So I think in some ways, even if a remake's arguably iffy, and I'll be honest, I never much cared for the whole, hey, this movie was done in this country, let's make an American version. I just think it, I don't know, I just never cared for that. It seems presumptuous, but at least it might bring a little more attention to the originals, which is probably one of the positive things.
Yeah, at one point it got to where they were just remaking movies that came out months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, rather than even give it 5, 10 years, it's just like, well, they just released this movie, but hey, let's do an American version of it.
Oh, that reminds me, because I just remembered this. Speaking about remakes that a lot of people may not remember, this is a French movie, Maltese, from I think it came out 2007, 2008 maybe. And it's a controversial movie. If you've seen it, you know why. But they actually they made an American version in like 2015, like randomly like 8 years later. Now I've not seen it, so I can't really rightly judge it, but I can only imagine um how shitty it is. Like whether I don't know whether it take 8 years to remake a French movie like that. So I don't know, just it's interesting the type of movies they choose to remake it out. To be honest.
Yeah, I do need to rewatch Martyrs because I don't think I ever actually finished it.
Well,
I've got it on Blu-ray, but I know it's kind of like got a fucked up ending or something. I've heard people talk about it. I've just for some reason I've just never gotten around
well,
to.
it's probably because it's French and you don't consider the French people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do have my battles with the French. Yeah.
So, I did have one question for you, and this is one of those questions. You might see it pop up on Twitter every now and again. Just people discussing, maybe arguing. Um, when you think about like I guess you could say the quote unquote three big remakes. The Halloween Rob Zombie remake, the Friday the 13th remake from 2009, and then you have the unfortunate Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Out of those three, which is your favorite if you have one?
Halloween.
Oh, that's not the direction I would have gone in, but I can appreciate it.
I just think I think it's one out of those with the best actors in it as well. But I mean, I suppose. See, this is where it comes into play how much you enjoy the original, because I know you love the original Halloween, whereas I enjoy it. I think it's a good movie, but I don't love it. And that's to say, I don't love the remake either, but I also feel it's an enjoyable movie. Whereas with Friday the 13th, I was never a huge fan of the original, and it's not even really. I mean, it's a remake, but it's very different to the original. I mean, it's got Jason as a killer. I mean, that's a big thing.
Some people could even argue it's even better than the original.
Yeah, I would probably say that it is. But at the same time, I still feel like it's your typical teen horror
Yeah, it's like a
slasher
generic
in
slasher
for
movie.
the 2000s with Jason in it. It's not, it doesn't quite have the same charm as like the 80s Jason movies, and so while I don't mind that remake, it's just, it's not fantastic or anything. And well, the Nightmare on Elm Street one, that's probably the worst out of the three, but I don't hate it as much as other people do, but it's still not good.
Yes, I guess for me, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, I actually felt it had some potential. I was actually when I was watching the movie, I was like, hey, are they going to change this up a little? Because there was a thing in the movie where it seemed like Freddy Krueger might have been innocent of the crime that he was killed for, and it seemed like it would have been interesting if they had killed an innocent man, and that's why he came back. So I was sort of excited it's a bit strong, but I'm like, hey, that's an interesting little twist on it. Um, the movie went the exact opposite direction, and I thought, I mean, that just pissed me off. I mean, I don't even think the movie's necessarily horrible. The whole like, what were they called, like micro dreams? That
Micro sleeps, or
yeah,
yeah, micro dreams, whatever. Yeah, micro naps.
yeah, that always seemed a bit convenient, and like, oh, it's so like modern day now. It's micro dreams, but um, it's not like it's, I don't know. I'm not even sure if it's a significantly worse movie than, I don't know. Let's say Friday versus Jason. I know that Friday versus Jason has a lot of fans, but
Freddy versus Jason is boss.
yeah, talk about a movie that's a lot of problems. Um, but we're slowly getting there. Um, and I did want to bring up, I guess, one more thing. Well, actually, two more things. But the My Bloody Valentine remake, which is a remake that maybe a lot of people don't remember, which I think it came out either 2010 or 2009, something like that, sometime in the late 2000s. And as you know, My Bloody Valentine's like one of my favorite. Well, it's actually my second favorite slasher movie. I legitimately love it, and it occurred to me that the only reason the DVD copy I bought came out was because of the remake. And I saw the remake once. It's been a long time, so I can't really accurately judge the remake right now. But I'm just going to say it's probably terrible, especially when you compare it to the beauty of the original.
So you're saying that you can thank the remake for getting the
Yeah,
old version restored.
which and that's, I guess.
To be honest, it probably would have happened at some point,
Yeah, well,
anyways.
you would hope so. I just, the attention that some of these movies, as some of these remakes bring to the originals is always, useful. Like I think there was even this Top Father remake. Now I've not seen this Top Father remake. Um,
I have.
yeah.
In
So
fact, I watched it for the second time probably a few months back.
would you say, compared to the original, what's your opinion?
Yeah, it's about the same. They're
Yeah. So
both like 6 out of 10 movies for me.
yeah. So I've always been sort of interested in seeing that one. Because obviously I'm a big Top Father fan too. So I would imagine I would have problems with it, but maybe it would surprise me in some ways. And it's also worth mentioning that among some of the worst remakes out there, there's always the Wicker Man. So,
Yeah.
well, the actually ironic thing is Wicker Man, somewhat the Nicolas Cage movie, is somewhat entertaining. It's just like, I mean, how can you not like Nicolas Cage?
I guess. I'm a
It's
prickly pear. Yeah.
um, and it's also one last thing worth mentioning. I sometimes see this movie pop up on like favorite remake lists, and it just sort of annoys, might be a bit strong, but it's also true. Because these people don't know horror. But the House of Wax movie from 2005, um, like calling that a remake is a bit disingenuous. I'm sure these people are doing it intentionally just to annoy me, but they might be. The original movie came out, I think it was 1953 with Vincent Price, and just believe me when I say the plots are nothing alike. So, and I actually like the House of Wax 2005 movie. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually found it pretty enjoyable.
Yeah,
I
it's not
feel like
bad.
if they had done like a more, like, I guess you could say, a quote unquote literal remake, I mean, talk about a movie that probably would not have gone over well.
So, we're in agreement. Remakes are awesome.
Well, I mean, they definitely. Now, actually, here's one last question. Well, if you could remake any horror movie or any few horror movies, what would you like to see remade?
Neon Maniacs.
Yeah, see, I was thinking about because I know you mentioned that during our review back in one of the first few episodes, and yeah, that one could definitely benefit of a remake.
Yeah, because like I was saying, it's I mean, look, it's enjoyable as an '80s movie, but there's two things to do with that movie. Is that I just feel like there's a lot of untapped potential with having so many maniacs on the loose like that, and they're all. I mean, some of them the characters weren't fleshed out, but there are a few characters in there that were very interesting, and it would have been nice to know more about them. And I just feel like there's a lot they could have done with that movie, and that movie was technically an unfinished movie that just got released because I think the guy that directed it, he kind of fell off, and there was a lot of things going behind the scenes, and I think they even said, look, it wasn't anyone's passion project, so it was just a movie they were literally making because, hey, it's a horror movie, we can make some money. So I feel like if they put a little more into it, they could have had a pretty. I mean, it's an enjoyable movie, but they could have had something even better.
Yeah, I sort of wonder. I guess my concern with the remake, because the original, despite being unfinished, despite having some flaws, I feel like it had a lot of heart in it. And I feel like the problem with a lot of remakes is they're just made solely for the money. Like, hey, this is a known quantity. If we make this Friday the 13th movie, it doesn't necessarily need to be great. It just has Jason and boom, people will buy it. Now obviously Neon Maniacs is not quite as well known as Friday the 13th, but I would just hope any remake that's made of like one of those movies has a little more going for it.
Yeah. Well, so that's another thing that I missed to mention is that because it doesn't have the fan base, there's going to be a lot less pissed off people if you do remake something like that. Obviously, there's still going to be fans of the original who are like, no, but
It's funny you mentioned that because I actually remember this is like back when they announced they maybe put out a trailer, but they put out a trailer for the Stepfather remake, and I remember making the post on Friday Eve for saying what are they doing making the Stepfather remake, and I think it was like Derail it. It's one of the classic members saying, why are you complaining about the Stepfather remake when they're remaking all these other movies? um, so yeah, there's always going to be somebody pissed off. And actually, I just remembered the Candyman remake. Has that movie been released or has it been pushed back because of COVID?
it got pushed back because of COVID, so it'll be out. I don't know, at some point in 2021.
Yeah, so now that's I really enjoy the original, but I'm sort of curious to see what they do from I guess a more modern day. I mean that movie's from the '90s, so it's not like it's a giant jump forward as far as technology goes. But I'm sort of curious to see how that one comes out.
It does make you feel old though, because I mean, knowing that it's been something like 30 years since that movie came out, and I mean, I remember it kind of being more of a newish movie back when I was younger.
Well, luckily, I was born in '93, I think. So, well, I know I was born in '93, but I was born a year after Candyman came out. So, luckily, I am not that old.
Hmm.
What are your favorite remakes, guys? Let us know.
Yeah. Smash that like button.
Just smash this like button, subscribe, bros. Fight Eve was totally the place to be, bros.
Yeah, I always feel like a douche if I have to say smash that like button. Like, you never hear us say that in any episode ever, and we're only saying it now because it's funny.
Yeah, so maybe we should start ironically saying it every single episode until it becomes unironic, and we could just get obsessed over it.
Mm.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So that is Remakes by Fight Evil.